welcome from the bottom of our hearts. You are the happiness troopers, so to speak. Uh, Before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. I think Raj has already said how the session will be arranged. In the beginning, there'll be teaching, then there'll be some exercises and contemplation slash visualization slash meditation, and then there'll be question and answers. So I think Raj had said it will be for 1 hour. Um, I had said 1 hour and 15 minutes. So what we have decided to do is today, it will be for 1 hour, but the question and answers will continue. So those of you who want to stick around beyond the 1 hour, Raj and I, we will be around for almost 15, 20 minutes after the 1 hour. But those of you who have other time commitments, please feel free to log out. The recordings, I think then Raj, I mean, we can send you the recording in case if you need to log out and if you have the wish to listen to what the questions and answers were. The questions and answers, you can keep typing them in the chat box all throughout. All throughout, you can keep typing them. And Elena will let us know which questions seem like a common question, and then we will answer those. There will be a homework before you join in, but obviously it's optional. And I also want to say this class is really for yourself. It is not something that we are grading or anything like that. So the homeworks, in fact, you may want to do it for your own sake. And to begin with, I just want to say that we all know that we want happiness. And when I say happiness, and Raj has explained it in his book also, happiness can be of two types, right? It can be short term or it can be long term. The short term happiness is the activities we do that are pleasant. It gives us good experience, joy, and so on and so forth. And the long term happiness comes from more seeking a purpose, sense of meaning, and fulfillment. And when it comes to long term happiness, sometimes that may mean in the short run, it may be difficult. In the short run, you may not have pleasant feelings, but that's okay because you know that it's taking you to a purpose or something that you find fulfilling. So just be aware of it. We are not talking about just short term happiness, but also long term happiness, which you can say that it's well being, a sense of well being. So that is the purpose of Dr. Raj, as you all know, has spent so many years doing research, studying other people's research. The book and the course is a testament to that. And I'm really excited that what I get to do is to help you to instill those habits. Because it is one thing to understand the happiness, and yeah, we want to be happy. And sometimes we even know what we should do to be happy. Sometimes we don't know, and it's good if someone who has more familiarity with this area tells you what you should do. But then it's one thing to understand it with your head, another thing to allow it to go to your heart, and then it reflects into behavior. So just know it takes practice. It doesn't mean that you read it and then immediately you change your behavior, change your habits. It's not like that. And this particular class is specifically to help you to think more, to allow these habits to become habits. And any habit, they say, it takes at least 2 months. So we are hoping that 8 weeks, which is 2 months, that you will be able to change some of your behaviors. And because you have all taken Raj's course or have read his book, you are already familiar with this material. But I'm hoping that it will become even more clear. You can ask questions about some of the difficulties you may have in practicing these habits. So let me give you a little bit of my own background. So I am a psychology professional, but I wasn't always a psychology professional. When I was young and when I was going through my own relationship troubles, that is the time when I became really interested in psychology. And eventually I decided to switch to it because I realized some things you really need to know. They are not all obvious.
Vamos por los juguetes.
Raj, can you mute? I'm not able to mute everybody, but you'll have to make sure you unmute me. So we all have gone through difficulties in life. It that's like the one thing that we all have in common. Dissatisfaction, difficulties, sometimes unhappy periods. That's part of our life. But it depends on how we take it, how we process it, and what comes out of it. That's the main thing. And that's what I'm hoping we all can develop, that strength, regardless of what life circumstances we are all facing. So the first happiness sin, like Dr. Raj calls it, have 7 happiness sins and 7 happiness habits. What we are going to do is each week we'll address one sin and one habit, and the last week we will wrap it all up. So the first one is that we devalue happiness. Although we know that yes, we want to be happy, we don't always pay attention to or give priority to what is it that's going to make us happy. For example, you all have taken this class because you are prioritizing happiness. In fact, I have to congratulate you that you are not devaluing your happiness. Otherwise, a lot of times we know, okay, I should take this class, or I should do this, I should go to this person, or whatever it is. But then, oh, but I'm too busy right now. I have this project to work on, and so on and so forth, and a lot of different obstacles we that comes to our mind. So we don't always make sure that whatever ways in which we can learn to be happy, we don't always prioritize it. So that's the sin number one. A simple example is when I was young, I used to wear high heels. And it's a benign example. However, I think some of you may be able to relate to it. So as I have grown older and I've realized that I really don't need to do that. And it is nicer to wear comfortable shoes. And there are some shoes that are still good looking and comfortable. So I don't have to give up wanting to wear nice shoes just because high heels are very uncomfortable for me, for my body style. So each one of us may have different ways in which we find our happiness, long term and short term, but it's something we have to be aware of. And with that now, Raj, I would actually like to ask you, how did you get into this field? How did you decide to make happiness as your research area?
Okay, thank you, Swati, for asking me that question. I did notice that Hetty said, Swati, if you could speak a little bit slower. She said,
Okay, all right, I will do that. Yeah,
okay. And if
yeah, that's
you
fair.
want
Yeah.
Swati to speak a little bit slower, Hetty, you'll definitely want me to speak a little bit slower as well, because I tend to speak really fast. Right now, I'm consciously trying to speak a little bit slower, but once I get into the groove, I think I have a tendency to speak a little bit faster. And if that happens, please do let us know. So to your question, Swati, why did I get interested in this topic? I was always very, very interested in the topic of happiness. Since I was a young kid, I would read up books on this topic of happiness. Of course, those days there weren't a lot of scientific books on the topic. There were more spiritual books, but many of you look like you might be of the same age group as me, and you might remember a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Yes.
Um, um, the Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck, for example. Books like that I would read because I was really interested in self improvement and in the topic of happiness broadly. And then I went down this track of doing the things that my parents wanted me to do and society wanted me to do, which is to get, degrees that were going to help pay the bills, like an engineering degree and an MBA degree and things like that, which I did. But I also maintained in parallel a very deep interest in the topic of happiness. And by then I was a little bit older, and I started reading more kind of, heavier philosophical books by people like Jiddu Krishnamurti and Schopenhauer and so on. But I never really dreamt that I could marry the two. That is that, my livelihood with the hobby of happiness. And that all changed around 2007 when I was already at the University of Texas. I was a professor of marketing. I continue to be a professor of marketing at the University of Texas. And I was teaching standard consumer behavior courses. And then I realized that, a lot of my students weren't really happy, even though they were on the path for great success, conventional success, money, fame, power, control, etc., status. But I knew that they weren't very happy. And I also knew that a lot of my own colleagues had gotten a engineering degree and an MBA degree. And a lot of my colleagues back in India by now, we were all middle-aged people, weren't really that happy. And some of them were even getting, uh, like depression attacks and going on pills. And truth be told, I myself went through a kind of emotionally negative phase in that period. And then I realized, why do we work so hard? Why do we do everything that we do? Surely, I mean, one of the big reasons is so that we can lead a happy and fulfilling life. And if in the end, all these achievements, all these things, pursuits of extrinsic rewards do not end up enhancing our happiness and fulfillment, then it's a kind of an empty quest. It's a meaningless quest. And so I decided to put this course together. And I remember this as if it happened yesterday, that a lot of my colleagues were of the opinion that the MBA students would not be interested in a topic on happiness. They are really interested in making money and success, career success, but not really interested in happiness. But it turned out that even 12 years back, and I think things have, moved even further in the direction I'm going to speak about now. Even 12 years back, happiness was a big topic of deep interest, of deep hunger. Very first time I taught my course, um, I had a waiting list. They did not know what the topic was, exactly going to be about, what the content was going to be, and I had no track record of teaching this class. But the very first time there was a waiting list, and it's continued to be that way all these years, including this spring semester. I'm going to be starting to teach this class soon. I have a waiting list in my class, both MBA and the undergraduate classes. So that's, in a nutshell, my journey, Swati. And I'm happy to kind of elaborate more, but I'll turn it back to you to continue on with your description of the first sin and habit.
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? To be interested in a topic, and then you are the fortunate one who can marry your profession and your interest that began in childhood. But Raj, can you tell us about the first happiness habit? Something about it that everybody here has taken your course, so they know it, but it would be great to hear it from you
Sure.
live.
Actually, I mean, you make an interesting point, right? That I'm one of the lucky few who can marry my kind of passion with my career. I actually
Hmm.
think that there is a lot of scope for a lot of us to marry the two, and this is actually relevant to the question you're asking now, which is what exactly is the first happiness habit? And you've described the first happiness sin, and I've described it in my book as devaluing happiness, deprioritizing happiness, even though it's very, very important for us. We all recognize it in abstract. If you were asked this question, why do you do anything that you do? I think that you would end up answering that question as, because I think that's the right thing to do, because it makes me happy, or it's the meaningful thing to do. And yet, when you observe people's actions across the day, any typical day, you'll see that they often sacrifice happiness for the sake of other things. Maybe in an argument with their spouse or with their child, they want to prove that they are right, even though they know that that's not going to lead to good outcomes. And yet, ego comes in the way, right? So back to this topic of what exactly is the first habit and how it's relevant to what I did with my career. One of the ways in which we might devalue happiness is by not exploring the ways in which we can marry our passion with our careers. All of us have the option of, at the very least, nudging our careers in the direction that is more meaningful. Okay. If not actually kind of making a big paradigm shift kind of change to pursue what it is that is truly our passion and make it our career. So this area is in the organizational behavior. It's called job crafting. You might have heard of this. Some of you might have heard of this term. It's called job crafting. So can you craft your job in a way that takes you in the direction in which you find it to be more meaningful, more passionate? That is the happiness maximizing thing to do. Okay. And many of us do not take that, opportunity or the option, because we just assume that, hey, I mean, I'm supposed to be doing this and that's it. I'm in this cage and I can't really change it. I'm out of control. I don't have the freedom, the autonomy to change what it is that I've been asked to do. And that is a mistake. That is the first happiness sin. That is deprioritizing happiness. All of us have the power. Sorry, I hear somebody else kind of unmuted themselves. So I'm going to mute all and then continue. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to unmute Swati and Elena. Okay, so uh, you know, so back to your question, Swati, on this idea of what is the first happiness habit. It is to prioritize happiness, and one way to do this, a very simple way, is to ask yourself just before you make any decision, what would a happiness maximizer do in this context? Okay, I'll give you another very quick example of happiness sin and habit. Right now, you're all signed up for this session, and it looks like many of you, I can't see everyone because there's upwards of 300 people here. Many of you are really focused on what it is that I'm saying, but there's a chance that some of you are distracted by, let's say, the cell phone, or distracted by, let's look at the news. I can actually, you're telling yourself this narrative that I can actually pay attention to Raj, I can pay attention to Swati, and I can absorb what they're saying, but let me also not waste this time, and let me try and use it more efficiently by looking at other things. That is a mistake. Okay, because research shows that the less mindful you are, the less distracted, less undistracted you are, the less um, focused you are on what it is that your activity is right now, the more unhappy you're going to be. And it's not as if you're going to get more time to do the things that all the things that you want to do by multitasking at all times. In fact, because you're less efficient in doing any one thing, you kind of do all the things kind of in a half-assed manner, and you have to go back to those things in order to do a better job of those. Right now, if you're writing a text message or an email, your mind is half here, half there. So there are probably going to be typos in that. Okay, and people are going to ask you back, what did you say there? And then you're going to have to spend some time in correcting those typos. And that is a happiness sin. That is exactly what I'm talking about here as an example of deprioritizing happiness. Reprioritizing happiness, which is what the habit is to focus on doing those courses of action that will enhance your happiness. Hopefully
Raj,
that.
can I point to one thing while you are saying this? You say this in your book about it's prioritizing happiness but not pursuing it, because I worry about one thing, because there are some real limitations or obstacles sometimes that come in people's way even after becoming aware of prioritizing happiness, and that can make them unhappy, that I'm not able to choose what makes me happy. Like, you give the example of not being able to sleep, and then if you are focusing on I need to sleep, I need to sleep, all the sleep research shows that unless I sleep well, my brain will not function properly. And then that itself stops them from falling asleep. So, can you talk a little bit about pursuing happiness versus prioritizing happiness? This is like a foundational thing that we don't need to take it so seriously that it makes us unhappy.
Great question again, Swati. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because the topic of happiness is so interesting to me, partly because it's complicated in a good way, I think. And one of the ways in which it's complicated is that even though it's important to prioritize happiness, if you take it too far in a sense, and you start pursuing happiness and become feverish about being happy, and you're constantly monitoring your current happiness levels with how happy you want to be, um, then it might actually backfire. And the interesting thing here is that most goals in our life are actually not that way. Think about wanting to achieve a degree, right? The harder you work, and the more you kind of pursue doing well in your career, or in your coursework, the more the chances you're going to achieve it. And if you want to save enough money for retirement, the more you kind of are very conscious about it, and maybe even desperate to save money. Now perhaps you'll end up saving more money. But happiness is one of those goals that, ironically, I call it an ironic goal. The more you feverishly and directly try and pursue it, it tends to backfire. It's like love. The more you directly pursue the object of your love, sometimes you turn the person off, right? So it's kind of similar. So the idea here is not to do the opposite, which is to say that, okay, I'm not even going to worry about happiness, because if I pursue it, chances are I won't achieve it. And that would not be a good thing. But on the other hand, the pendulum shouldn't swing all the way to the other extreme of becoming feverish. So there's a happy medium, and that happy medium is prioritizing happiness, recognizing it's important, and understanding what uh, courses of action tend to reliably and consistently increase the happiness, but at the same time, not being so feverish about it that you're not lighthearted in your way. There is a saying that I like that is more gentle than happiness. It is that to do things that are important and serious in life, but not take yourself too seriously. So that is the happy medium, to realize happiness is important but not become feverish. And I like the word prioritizing, for to kind of get at this idea. Prioritize happiness, but do not pursue it, do not chase it.
In fact, it also reminds me of this other saying, which says, I'm perfect the way I am, but there is always room for improvement.
Right.
So to think that I am somehow what I'm doing is wrong and imperfect and to be unhappy about it. Instead, to know that, yeah, in my perfection also, there is always room for improvement. That's a better way of looking at it. And there are a lot of situations in life, Raj, where uh, some limitations come in, like sometimes maybe social obligations. That's an example. Or it could be practical considerations, such as when there are like two types of jobs that you can take up. What would you choose? Like my son, he just graduated, and he's passionate about music, and he had an opportunity to work in the music industry versus a regular corporate job. So one was more prestigious, was offering more money, and beginning of his career, right? So should he do that, or should he just follow his passion? And some people will say at this age, maybe it's better to follow your passion. So there are these kinds of trade-offs that we always have, and it depends on the person, right? So can we now, can I get into an exercise to let people explore their own idea of happiness? Because it is not always one thing for everybody. And in your book, you talk about 6 factors that can lead to happiness. And I'm going to, in fact, ask all of you. Some of you may have already done this exercise. If you have done it, all the better, because it will be some amount of repetition, which is what makes it into a habit. So I'm going to show you, I hope I can share my screen. I'm going to show you the 6 factors that can lead to happiness. And for some of you, it may be something totally different. But I'm going to ask you all to maybe have a pen and paper, or if you are not going to get distracted, you can use your phone to just make a note. I'm going to try to share my screen. Can everybody see it, Raj?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So love and connection, which includes relationships or as well as activities where you feel connected with that activity. Joy, we all know about joy, a feeling of a true deep feeling of happiness. Authentic pride, which is when something is challenging and you take up that challenge and you meet that challenge, something you've decided you would do, and then you end up doing it, and then you feel an authentic sense of pride. That can lead to happiness. The next one is hubristic pride, which is about, wanting to be superior, wanting to be the best. And just because you're better than others, you feel the pride. So without any judgment, some people may, in fact, have their happiness level increase because of hubristic pride. Harmony is being in sync with what is going on in your life right now, being in sync with whatever activity you are doing right now, to feel that this is the right thing. Abundance, so that is about feeling whatever it is, that's enough. Like I don't need to pursue money anymore. What I have, I'm happy with it. Or it could be even love and connection and joy, or whatever it is, that I have enough of it. That doesn't mean you're not going to work for more, but again, it's the same thing. Life is, I'm perfect the way I am, but there's always room for improvement. Or there could be something totally different that you may find gives you happiness. So I'm going to ask you all to think about which factors, 2 or 3 factors that are most important to you, that can lead to you feeling happy or happier. And if you can write a sentence, 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, in other words, write it in a sentence form that includes these factors, like how they make you feel. If you can write a sentence, 1, 2 or 3 sentences. And if there is any question about it, can you please write it in the chat box? And Elena, can you tell me if somebody is not clear about this exercise?
I have a few questions about the hubristic pride, because some people are saying here that isn't it supposed to be a negative thing?
Yes, but that doesn't mean it leads. Yeah, we are not talking, as I said, there is no judgment here. Some people, I mean, these factors have come up because of researchers in the happiness field. When they ask questions to people, these are the common factors that have come up. And Raj has added harmony and abundance to it. So again, without any judgment, yes, but we'll get to whether it is negative or not and what it does to you. We'll get to that later. But regardless, sometimes, being better than others may give you a sense of happiness.
There's also a question, what's the difference between happiness and joy?
uh, as I said, when you say happiness, you're talking about the short term and the long term sense of well-being, sense of fulfillment, and all those different things. So it's much bigger than joy. Joy is feeling of excitement or feeling of in like the warm feeling that we get when we are, let's say, talking to a person who we really feel connected. You feel a sense of joy. Or those of you who are parents, your child does something that you are proud of, you feel a sense of joy.
So
Swati, could you?
I would characterize joy as, not having a care in the world. Okay, a good example of that might be, I don't know if you can remember this, but right after the exam period is over and the whole summer is stretching in front of you, 2 months of nothing to do, not a care in the world. That's joy. And you can think of happiness as an umbrella term that captures all these other emotions under it. And as Swati mentioned, this is from research by Dr. Keltner and Barbara Fredrickson on different kinds of positive emotions that people experience. And they had people write a short essay to the prompt, think about the last time that you felt really positive, what happened. And then they analyzed what people had written. And what they found is that people typically write about love and connection. That's the most popular category, but people also write about things that made them joyful. People write about things that made them grateful, hopeful, awestruck. People write about funny things that happened that has to do with laughter, and so on and so forth. And it turns out people do write about things that made them feel good because they perceive themselves as superior to other people. And that's called hubristic pride. And that, as Swati said, no negative judgments against things. But it turns out that hubristic pride isn't a very good thing to follow, because pride comes before a fall, as they say. The more you compare yourself to other people and feel good as a result of the comparison, there's a higher chance that you also sometimes come up short of them, lower than them. And so you're bound to feel miserable, insecure, maybe even jealous and envious because of it. So it's not a very good way to make your life happier. Authentic pride, which comes from comparing yourself to yourself, how I was in the past and how I overcame this challenge, that's a more sustainable source of happiness. And perhaps the most sustainable source of happiness is gratitude, expressing a sense of thankfulness and feeling really good about how well taken care of you are, either by other people or by luck and circumstances. And if you want to, call it God, then by God. That, it turns out in the research, is a very, very sustainable source of happiness.
So gratitude, people may want to include it in other, or you can actually put it in love and connection or even harmony. Because gratitude, it's true that it's a very big factor of feeling a sense of happiness, a sense of harmony.
Sorry, could you please repeat the task once again?
The tasks. Okay, so think about which 2 or 3 factors are important to you that lead to happiness increase in your own case. And if you can write it down in a sentence form, such as love and connection has always made me really happy, and overcoming my challenge and feeling the authentic pride has been a source of happiness for me. That's an example of putting it in a sentence form. So to write it, to make it clear to ourselves, that's the idea.
Right. So the idea here is, again, happiness is a very abstract concept. And if you think of happiness as in more specific terms, as love and connection, or as joy, or as authentic pride, and so on, then it becomes more tangible. And the more tangible something is, the greater the chance that we are going to want to pursue it, because we can see it, right? We can hold it in our hands, so to speak. And so that's the idea. And it turns out that because of life stages, because of personalities, because of past experiences, different things are important for different people. For you, happiness might be this joyful feeling, of being lighthearted, even if you're doing something that's serious. That is what, for you is the most important thing. For others, it might be a sense of love and connection. For still others, it might be a sense of, prayer and kind of transcendence into being united with God, if you believe in that. So you need to be clear about what it is, of all these different positive emotions, that is the thing that you value the most in your life. Okay. And once you have that clarity, then it becomes a little bit easier to actually pursue it, and or prioritize it, I should say, and to experience it.
So I'll give you a few minutes to write it down, and then we'll move on.
Uh, I see Patricia has raised her hand. I would encourage you guys to, if you don't feel like typing in your question in the chat box, which Elena is monitoring, just hold on to your questions, maybe write it down so that you don't forget it on your notebook or something. And then we will give you about 20 minutes right at the end for you to raise those questions.
Yeah, to actually talk.
I'm
So
really
now I want,
sorry, I
sorry.
just wanted to quickly say that a lot of people are typing in their own definitions of happiness and what makes them happy in the chat box, which is great.
Yeah,
These are going to be saved. And so, it'll be good material for us to reflect on later on.
later, yes. So now I'm going to ask you to think about a few activities that you do, real concrete activities that can lead to one of these factors, and as a result can give you a sense of happiness. For example, I had that, meeting my friends nowadays, maybe on Zoom, not face to face these days, but meeting my chat, talking to my friends, or helping my family members, or if you are a sports person, then sometimes whatever sports you play, and if you play a good game of that, then that gives you a sense of maybe authentic pride. Or if, let's say, you are into praying and chanting and these kinds of things, that may give you a sense of harmony. So any activity, actual activity that you have done, and that has given you this sense of one of these factors, and as a result a sense of happiness, can you write it down? Maybe just 2-3 activities or more if you're fast. And for as you're writing it, as you're writing the activities that gives you a sense of happiness, I would also invite you to think about if there are any limitations when it comes to choosing something or doing an activity that you like to do. If there is any limitation you can think about, which is something we can talk about later if you wish. but just to kind of think about what are the limitations. Yeah, I see people are writing their happiness, source of happiness. And yeah, so all through the day, there are times when we have to choose one versus the other. And sometimes we end up choosing something else other than what we know would give us happiness. So if you can think about one or two such situations lightly, that's also something you can write about. Okay, so now that you know this, I'm going to ask you to put your pen and paper away. And I would invite you all to pay full attention, to gather all your attention. Like Raj said, that when you do that, in fact, wandering mind is an unhappy mind. There is a famous study and paper. It's called Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind. But our mind does wander around, but let's try to focus on one thing right now. And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and we are going to go through visualization slash meditation slash contemplation to see that what you have written, if you can allow yourself a deeper understanding and set the right intentions. That is the first thing we are going to do. We are going to set the right intention. So let's begin. And I'm going to have this gong to set the right tone. And take a few deep breaths, giving nourishment to the body, allowing yourself to experience the nourishment that's coming through the breath to your body. 2 or 3 deep breaths. And now allowing yourself to think about the factors that are important to you. The sentences that you wrote, if you can say those sentences in your mind, slowly and clearly saying those sentences in our minds. The sentences that involve the factors that lead to increased happiness in your life. Saying those sentences in your mind and allowing yourself, your mind, to hover around those factors, allowing those factors to go deep in your understanding. What does love and connection mean to me? What does harmony mean to me? Whichever 2 or 3 factors you wrote, allowing your mind to hover around those factors, allowing your attention to be totally focused on those factors, and see how it feels like to think about these factors or to have the attention going to these factors. How does it feel like in your body? How does it feel like when you say love and connection, or whichever factor, authentic pride, or whichever factor, saying it to yourself in your mind And then paying attention to how it feels like in the body. Do you feel a sense of comfort, a sense of warmth in the tummy, in the heart area? How does it feel like in the body when you say these words in your mind? And allowing yourself to think about the activities that you wrote and thinking about a pattern that may come out of those activities. It may tell you what your strengths are already. You possess some character strengths, such as you're empathic, you're thoughtful, or you are disciplined. Any character strength, or you are patient, or you are mindful, whatever character strength you may have, allowing yourself to think about that character strength. And you can place your hand, your palm on your heart area if you wish. Open your heart. Open the gentleness, the compassionate part of you. And with that, viewing yourself and understanding, allowing yourself to think about your own strengths. These are the strengths that you will be applying to these factors to get these factors and then move more towards happiness. And now I'm going to invite you to set the right intentions, to make a commitment, to make a commitment to understand these factors and to make choices that fit into these factors as much as you can. I make a commitment to use my strengths to increase these factors in my life as much as I can. Without pursuing it, I make a commitment to make it a priority to increase these factors in my life. And in order to set the right intentions, I'm going to ask you to repeat these sentences in your mind as I'm saying it. May I be happy. May I be at ease with myself. May I experience joy. May I experience love and connection the way that makes me feel happiness, love and connection with people and with activities. the way I want, the way that makes sense to me. So, whatever the intention is, the intention is a personal one. So, whatever the factor means to you, that is the right intention. So, may I experience joy? May I experience love and connection? May I experience harmony? May I experience abundance? And if there is anything else to which you would like to set the intention, you would like to practice it or do more of it, that will increase your happiness. I'm going to invite you to say that in a sentence. May I do this? Whatever it is that comes to your mind. And allowing yourself to deeply pay attention to what you're saying. Everything else is outside the door at the moment. It's you and your attention and your heart understanding these factors, paying attention to what you're saying. May I be happy. May I be at ease with myself. May I experience joy. May I experience love and connection. May I experience harmony. May I experience abundance. And now saying to yourself, may I pay attention to the challenges, if there are any, and may I come up with creative ways to overcome these challenges. Creative ways to overcome these challenges. May I prioritize happiness in this way, knowing that priority to happiness increases my own happiness level as well as the happiness of the people in my surrounding. And now, taking a few deep breaths again. Giving nourishment to the body through these breaths. And paying attention to the nourishment that comes to us through the breathing. And getting ready to leave this meditation exercise. You can open your eyes. And welcome back, everybody. So now, if you, we have 10 more minutes for the 1 hour to be done. And then after that, Raj and I will still hang out for 15 more minutes if there are any questions. But at this point, you can either type in your questions in the chat box, or in fact, if you can say something about your experience when you were meditating. What did you experience? Did it make you feel a little bit more deeply understand your own happiness factors? Or for some people, maybe it was hard to focus on it. Or some people may have thought about maybe challenges instead of focusing on the factors. Any experience you had in the meditation, if you can type it in. Hard to focus, some people are saying. Somebody's saying, what a feeling. It was wonderful. Some people had a really good experience. Rechannelizing mind, yes. Somebody said hard to focus. That's a common thing. So it depends on, sometimes it depends on when you're doing it. Sometimes it's easier to focus, sometimes it's hard. But if you really do want to focus, then I would say keep doing it. All Another thing I want to say, the sentences I asked you to do, like may I do this, may I do that, that's like setting up the intention. You are saying it out loud to the universe. That's what you would like to have in your life. And then what happens is you start working towards it. Sometimes it may seem mechanical to say these sentences, but like a rabbi said, that you keep dropping these words on your heart, and one day your heart opens up, and then it can actually take the words in. So that's the way it is. You keep saying it, and suddenly one day you realize it's making a difference to me. Lot of things running in my mind while meditating. Yes, that can happen. Somebody felt, Sabine felt a sense of flow, calmness. It brought joy. I felt the support of the ground. That's wonderful. True nature of myself. That's really nice.
So, Swati, if I may, I want to make a comment here
Yeah.
about, and this is,
Mm,
you know, slightly tangential to how people felt. I want to talk
mm,
about um, why what you walked us through can be useful
mm,
and how it's aligned with prioritizing happiness. One of the kind of most fundamental ways in which we commit the first happiness sin, and by the way, you know, I didn't mention this earlier, by sin I don't mean a religious moral transgression. It's just a mistake or a problem that we impose on ourselves. That's what I mean by a sin. And one of the fundamental ways in which we commit the sin of deprioritizing happiness is by not giving ourselves permission to be happy. I know it might sound like a strange thing to say that we don't permit ourselves to be happy, but that's what happens to a lot of us. You know, I've discovered, at least with the MBA crowd, a lot of them don't even feel at some level that they deserve to be happy, because
yeah.
they feel that, you know, they have so many things to achieve and happiness is incompatible with it, or that they've committed some, you know, maybe not crimes, but um, they have behaved in an unethical fashion, and therefore, you know, they don't deserve to be happy, and so on. So within this context, and you might feel that way too, right? And you can go back to thinking that way after this exercise is over, but within this context of the mindfulness workshop, you have 100% permission. You're just as deserving as anybody else in the whole universe is or has been to feel happy. And the good thing about happiness, in the way that we're going to define it, not so much as hubristic pride, hopefully, but more as love and connection and gratitude and awe, is that I would say not only do you deserve to be happy, I would say you're obligated to be happy because it makes other people around you happy. Okay. So take it in that spirit, and you're committing to the first happiness habit of prioritizing happiness by foundationally offering yourself and inviting yourself to have the opportunity to feel happy. May I be happy. May I feel peaceful. May I be blessed. And there's nothing selfish about it. Okay. I just wanted to make.
Raj, can I add to it? That's such a great point you're making. I think it is about giving ourselves permission to be happy, because sometimes it may feel like a selfish thing, because you feel by pursuing happiness for myself, I am just focusing, I'm being self centered. But that's not the type of happiness we are talking about. The true happiness makes others in our environment happy too. The other thing is sometimes those who have achieved, let's say, something in life by experiencing anxiety, it may feel that anxiety is their way of motivating themselves. And if they let go of that anxiety, then they will become complacent. They will not want to work hard at anything. But I just want to say, tons of research shows you don't need that amount of anxiety. Some amount of stress, yeah, that's okay. But you can actually, if you are happier, then you can in fact be more creative and you can be more productive. So you say that in your book also, and that's a really important point. And I see a lot of comments on what they experience in the meditation. Some of you were not able to focus, or some of you may somebody said, I felt sleepy. That's a very common thing. So none of these experiences are uncommon, even if you couldn't do it, but a lot of people did feel more in touch with their own priorities. Limitations. So should we now open it up for questions for
Yeah.
people who want to talk about either limitations or questions? Elena, do you want to ask a question that you think is
I
coming
heard
up?
that I saw many people were saying that when we talked about limitations, they mentioned time, of course, and energy, and some of them were obligations, things that we need to do, that we have to do, and
Mhm.
not necessarily want to do. So I think actually, even to do the exercise, the first exercise that you offered, when we had to choose the category, joy or connection that could give us happiness, that requires the ability to listen to yourself, to really know what makes you happy, because maybe sometimes it's not even easy to get that because you're not used to listening to yourself and to what actually gives you the feeling of happiness. Maybe you know what gives you pleasure, but it's probably harder to see what makes you happy. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you really differentiate, or how do you start listening to yourself and understand what do I really want? Because I know many people, and especially people who are elderly, they still don't know how to understand what they want, because all their life they were used to following orders at school, at the university. Then you go to your work, you listen to your boss, you do what the boss tells you to do, and so you never really get a chance. And so, and then people say, well, do what you want and you'll be happy. And they say, what do I want? How do I know what I want?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great, yeah, that's a great point. I think that's part, Elena, I feel like that's partly why we are doing this exercise, to allow ourselves to think about what is it that makes me happy. And I just want to say that sometimes if you're not used to it and if you start thinking about it, like love and connection or authentic pride or whatever, sometimes you may realize that, yeah, that does give me happiness, but I'm not really doing activities that are so I just want to make sure that if that's happening, I hope that you don't become unhappy because you realize that so far you didn't do enough of those activities. It's okay. It's okay. So self-compassion is one of the things that I would like you to practice, the kindness to yourself. And this is a light way of setting a tone for understanding what's important.
So I
Some
do.
people may already know. Yeah.
Sorry, Swati. I just wanted to kind of follow up on that point.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there are two parts to your question, Elena. The first part is, people saying that uh, I feel like I don't have time, I don't have energy, etc. So that has to do with the constraints and limitations. And the second is lack of conceptual clarity on what it is that makes me happy, right? And the second part, absolutely, I think this is the first step. Uh, if you don't even take the step of trying to figure out what it is that makes you happy, then there's a very little chance you're going to arrive at clarity on that question. And this, treat it as a first step, and unlike other goals in your life where, you're feverish about achieving those, I think that you have to take this attempt a little bit lightly, with self-compassion, with the understanding that, this is like peeling the layers of the onion. And you might and you're very right, Elena. I think that we have a much stronger understanding of what gives us pleasure. And in some ways, maybe that might be even the starting point. Identify what gives you pleasure. Maybe it's eating certain kinds of food, and maybe those are unhealthy foods. But nevertheless, having that understanding and self-awareness is important. Maybe it's taking a nice long shower, maybe too long a shower, for to be environmentally friendly. But nevertheless, it gives you pleasure, right? So write that down. Maybe it's getting a massage, whatever it is, and start there. At least we have a lot of clarity on what gives us pleasure. And then you'll discover that once you have this in your top of your mind, that we did this exercise, the rest of the week, this week that's coming up, um, be aware of the experiences that seem to bring the sense of joy or happiness to you. And maybe I've discovered that I really, really love stand-up comedy acts. Okay. And I didn't realize how much I enjoy them. It's partly because, I like to laugh, I suppose, but also partly because, um, I'm actually watching this with my family or friends, and it's the social aspect of it. And so, keep a record of all the things that consistently produce this feeling of joy, happiness, connection, etc. And you'll slowly but surely start to gain greater and greater conceptual clarity on what are the set of things that consistently make you happy. So treat this as a slightly longer term project rather than solving the problem right now. So that's one thing I
And
wanted to say.
also, Raj, I also want to add one other thing. Sometimes there are activities, or sometimes there is a difficult period in life. So you are talking about the immediate, and that's so important, even when you're going through difficult time, to make sure that you do activities that bring you that short-term happiness. But like one person is asking, I love and find happiness when I connect with my adolescent children, but having said that, they often do not want to connect. How can I see this limitation differently? And those of you who have had experience with this, and if it may not be adolescent children, it could be even your own parents. So so that this is an example of patience, as in, yes, knowing that's what you want to do. And how do you get to that? So creative ways, I mean, in terms of adolescent children, how do you listen to them as opposed to actually, I mean, there is a transitional period, right? Instead of being the parent who's dictating everything, parent who listens and treats the children as more or less grown up adults. So anything of this sort takes some creative thinking or learning about that specific problem. So be patient and keep looking for ways in which you can actually incorporate this into your life.
I
And
actually
I
have,
can tell you,
sorry, go ahead.
just one thing I can tell you based on my own experience. Um, my son used to, like not spend that much time at home, and I used to wait on him when he used to come back home. And I used to find myself very unhappy that he suddenly would say, I'm going out. And I'm like, I cooked for you and you're going out. And that was like a common problem. Then one day he said to me, he said, Mom, just wait. Right now, I'm more interested in my friends, but I will come back. Don't worry. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm the psychology professional. I should be the one knowing this. But he was right. Once he grew up after 2, 3 years, in fact, now he enjoys spending time with us on his own terms, not my terms, but I understood I needed to go with his flow. So that's an example.
So I wanted to add to that, and I actually have teenage children right now, and I'm going through that, at the most intense level, because my son is 16, my daughter is 12. She's actually 12 going on 15, it looks like. Um, so one thing that we did, and this is really because of the pandemic, and some of you guys might have heard me talking about this in other forums, that was a nice creative solution to this. And I'm kind of like, hoping that it lasts for a longer time. It's already worked out pretty well. So we have, maybe next time around I'll show you a photograph of this, but we have a white board in our breakfast area where we all assemble to eat. And on that board, we have divided it up into 4 rows for one of each of us, me, my wife, and my 2 kids, and 7 columns for each of the days of the week. And then everybody gets an opportunity of a 2 hour to 3 hour window to propose an activity that everybody else has to do, okay, every week. Okay. And we just carve out a time that doesn't have any other conflicts. The kids are attending school right now online, so outside of the school time hours, and you just put in your activity and everybody else has to do it. And this week, my activity is that everybody has to make a short movie about a road trip that we took. We took a road trip last week. We went to Amarillo, Texas, and we came back, a 1 week trip, and we've taken maybe about 1,000 photographs together, all four of us, and maybe about 200 videos. And all of these have been uploaded to a common platform everybody can share. And you have to kind of select a set of pictures and videos and create. We haven't, I didn't give them a constraint on how long it has to last, but I imagine that people are going to make a 5-minute movie or so. And everyone's got to make that movie now and then show it to each other during that 2 hour window that's coming up tomorrow evening, Sunday evening. Okay, so if you do something like this, then you suddenly, rather than asking them, hey, spend time with me, that actually provokes what's called psychological reactance. Then even if they did want to spend time with you, they want to push you away, right? You're encouraging them to exhibit some level of creativity, and you're offering them, in a very democratic process, a chance to also ask everybody else to participate in their activity. And it could be playing a game of tennis. My son is heavily into tennis, or watch a documentary that my daughter chose called All American. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's trending right now. It's not necessarily good. I hope my daughter doesn't hear this, um, but it really brings us together, right? And it exhibits kind of teenage angst and things like that, and it makes me understand through the documentary her psyche a little bit better, things like that. So I just wanted to offer that. And one last comment is that, for those who are feeling these limitations of time and energy and all that, what I've discovered is really works well for me is that I just give myself a certain amount of time. Let's say this 1 hour that we meet, right? In this time, I'm not going to let that constraint affect me. In this time, only in this time. Okay, outside of this time, once I go out my, back to my real world, then maybe I'll start feeling, yeah, I don't have enough time, I don't have energy. But for this 1 hour, I'm not going to let that thought come into my head that I don't have time, that I don't have energy. And once you carve out a certain amount of time every day to feel that way, then you can start expanding that time to encompass more and more time in which you don't feel it's largely a mental game, that you feel these constraints are impinging upon you. And if you can kind of carve out, and I don't want to kind of belittle those who actually have those major constraints. Maybe you have a disease or a health problem that makes you feel that you don't have energy, and surely, I mean, that's important. But for a certain amount of time, give yourself the freedom and permission to think that I don't have this constraint right now. For this 10 minutes, I don't have any problems, I don't have any constraints. And see if experiment, see if you can expand out that time for more than 10 minutes, maybe 11 minutes, 12 minutes, and so on and so forth.
Raj, somebody is asking, and I would like to address this. Can you, I think it went away somewhere, something about, can you implant happiness in your subconscious? I think it is kind of related to what you're saying also. And I would say yes, as in, like what you're saying, carve out this one time, and that, and when I ask you to set the intentions, that is a very important activity, to say these intentions of, I'm going to prioritize my happiness, may I experience this, may I experience that. And even like neuroscientists actually say that when you set these intentions, or when you say these things, you open up your mind, you look for creative ways to solve the problem, you become patient, you also know if you're going through a difficulty, it's going to pass, it's not going to stay forever. So yes, so to say these sentences again and again in your mind will set you up, set your brain up to look for these kinds of solutions. And I was listening to Dr. Doughty. I don't know, many of you may know about him. He's the one who started this Compassion Center in Stanford. He's a neuroscientist. So I was listening to his interview, and he specifically said that this kind of activity, it does something. And I'm not talking about, many of you may know about The Secret, that, law of attraction. I'm not talking about anything that is not, like that is just sort of not proven or something like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about setting the right intentions and make it clear to yourself, to your brain and to your heart. What is it that you want? and not to get too attached to it, but to clarify, not to cling on to it, not to make you unhappy when you're not able to do it, but to make it clear to yourself.
By the
Is
way,
there any other? Yeah.
sorry, I wanted to offer this. I'm sure there are many questions, and I love the way Elena articulated this particular question. Um, and it might seem like, okay, Swati and I are organizing this, and we're kind of like giving you knowledge, wisdom, or whatever. Uh, and a lot of you have a lot of insights and a lot of wisdom as well. And I'd love to also learn from all of you. So one thing that I'm going to offer is that I'm going to put these videos up. This is being recorded, by the way. And if you have privacy concerns, let me know. And maybe you should kind of not, have your video on, because I think that the recording people are going to see what I'm seeing right now, which is everyone's faces. So I'm going to put these up on YouTube and Facebook. And if you have a particular insight or a thought, for example, creative ways in which you can connect with your own children, teenage children, then make a video. That would be the ideal thing to do, and send it to me, and I will upload those too on YouTube. Okay. Or at the very least, type out what your idea is and send it to me, and I will put it. Actually, better way to do it is you yourself kind of put it down in your comment, in the comment section underneath the video. I just wanted to mention that. So we are at 11:12, guys, and I'm cognizant of time, and I don't want to. I didn't ask Elena to stay back after an hour. I don't know if she has other things coming up. Elena, so do you want to share a little bit about where you are placed and whether we can entertain maybe another question?
Well, I honestly need to go at 12:15, but I can still ask a question. So maybe I'll put a few of them in one. I saw some people asking about how can I be happy and allow myself be happy if I don't like the situation in which I'm living. And also there was another question. This was, by the way, from Patricia, and there was another one before that about the pandemic in general. So we are stressed, we are with so much anxiety and tiredness and all these, or maybe I'm suffering from some physical pain. So, how can I be happy despite all of these things?
Raj, you want to answer
Yeah,
this
I'll
or
say
you?
something, and then after that, Swati, you can say something, and
Yeah.
then we'll close out this.
Mm, mm,
Very quickly, I'm going to send you all a link to a TED talk on resilience, okay, which is what this is about. When you're going through a bad patch, when you're having, negative experiences, how can you bounce back? How can you be hopeful despite all of these things going on? And it covers 3 tips that I won't talk about here, but I'll talk about one of my own research findings on the topic. What we find is that when you go through negative experiences, it's very, very negative when it's happening. But once the negative experience is over, let's say a couple of years have passed, when you look back on those very negative experiences, you actually kind of maybe not cherish them, but see the value of them. You see how they've helped you grow and learn and become better, bigger people. Okay. And the irony is that we always hate it when it's going on. Okay. But we always want challenges, right? I mean, that is one of the consistent things that comes out in my MBA, and I imagine you guys are similar to them. When I ask them, okay, what kind of a job would you like? They say, I would like a challenging job. Okay. But during the challenge, nobody likes it. And we reflect on it, once it's over, particularly if enough time has passed, and we say, I learned a lot from it. And the trick is somehow to kind of flip that, right? I mean, if you imagine in your mind's eye this graph of time on the x-axis and how much you like it on the y-axis, we don't like the present moment. We look forward to even positive experiences, for that matter. Vacations, we actually think we're going to enjoy 10 out of 10. During the vacation, it's not much more than how normal life is, maybe a 6 out of 10. Once a vacation is over, we reflect on it and say it was a 10 out of 10. Okay. um, so the idea is, how do you kind of like what is going on right now? And that's what I mean by harmony, by the way. That experience of harmony is life is perfect with its imperfections. Okay, life is perfect with its imperfections. And that is really at some level a mental switch that you turn on. And it might be easy for me to say because, perhaps my life is pretty good, on average. I don't have any health problems or things like that. But really, I mean, at some level, it's a thing that you adopt, a mindset that you adopt. And one of the ways in which we found that you can adopt it is by reflecting on your past negative experiences. If they turned out good in the end, okay, why can't the current negative experience turn out good in the future? And so you kind of put yourself in your future self mind frame and reflect on what's going on right now and say that there are ways in which this particular experience is going to help me learn, grow, become a better person. And once you start doing that, it becomes a little bit easier. It won't be 100%, but it become a little bit easier and more palatable. Okay, that's something that I have to offer. Over to
Thank you
you,
so
Swati.
Yeah,
much.
thank you, Raj.
Sorry, I have to leave right
Okay,
now.
Okay,
bye, Elena.
thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much, Elena. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. So,
Thank
Raj,
you.
what you said is absolutely true. The resilience part. I, at the same time, I do want to offer compassion to people who are experiencing additional stress because of either financial constraints, concerns, or maybe social isolation. Those kinds of things are extremely real. And I also know, because I work with people, that there has been an increase in anxiety, depression, and all the things that come with it, low level of energy, all these kinds of things. I totally want to acknowledge it. And given that it is happening, like Raj said, now, how do we deal with it? That's where the resilience comes in. And I, again, the meditation that we did, I wonder if setting the intentions right, or asking yourself to, may I find creative solutions to overcome this challenge I'm having? Or what comes to you, like, this cliched saying that says, life gives me lemons and then I make lemonade
Mhm.
out of it. So um, I wonder if it is possible to do that. It's not easy, but given whatever constraints, whatever limitations we have, how can we still process things differently? So that's the question I have for you. And any one of you who is doing that, it would be great if, like Raj said, if there's a lot we want to learn from you also, all of you. And at this point, maybe with that, maybe we want to close this session. And thank you everybody for joining in. And I'm wishing you all increased happiness factors in your life in spite of the pandemic. And any one of you, if you have any comment or question, please feel free to email me. And I think, Raj, you can say if it is okay to email you. You have my email because you have received the Zoom link and all that from me. So any comment or anything, any question, you can feel free to email me. And this recording will be available too for those who want to go over the chats and all that. And I'm going to do that myself. I'm going to go over the whole chat to make sure that I know what people are saying. So thank you, everybody. And bye. And we'll see you next week, same time.